It's time for Catholic Deep Dive. Now, I realize that normally we would open with a prayer, and normally we will, but in light of what we've been talking about so far and what we'll be talking about today, I thought we'd change it up a bit. I'm going to open with the sign that's actually outside the Coventry Cathedral in England. I used it in other workshops, and it kind of captures the idea, or at least the attitude, of initiation. Besides, I may not be in charge of most things, but I'm the one writing the script. The Coventry Cathedral welcome sign. We extend a special welcome to those who are single, married, divorced, widowed, gay, confused, rich, comfortable, or dirt poor. We extend a special welcome to wailing babies and excitable toddlers. We welcome you whether you sing like Pavarotti or just growl quietly to yourself. You're welcome here if you're just browsing, just woken up, or just got out of prison. Now, we don't care if you're more Christian than the bishop or haven't been to church since Christmas 10 years ago. We extend a warm welcome to those over 60, but not grown up yet, and to teenagers who are growing up too fast. We welcome keep fit moms, football dads, starving artists, tree huggers, latte slippers, vegetarians, or junk food eaters. We welcome you if you're having problems, are down in the dumps, or don't like organized religion. We offer a welcome to those who think the earth is flat, work too hard, don't work, can't spell, or are here because Granny is visiting and just wanted to come to church. We welcome those who are inked, pierced, both, or neither. We offer a special welcome to those who could use a prayer right now, had religion shoved down their throats as kids, or got lost in the city center and wound up here by mistake. In a lot of ways, I've always thought that this reading kind of captures the spirit of initiation. Now, stop me if you heard this, but my name is Dave and I'm not in charge. And whenever I think I might be in charge, I get a reminder that I'm not. You see, over the past 20 some odd years, I've developed a series of presentations that have a certain schedule. I know how important it is for people to not only be comfortable at Mass, but to see all the deep teachings found in Mass. The idea that the Mass is the source and summit of our faith is more than a pithy saying that fits on a t-shirt. These presentations have a rhythm and a schedule, a scope and sequence for those that are in the education background. Normally, the scope and sequence matches with an outline of the Mass. Normally, and I know it seems to use the word normal this past year, but normally our sessions are in person and year round. I don't need to tell you that since you've lived through these issues of trying to develop something engaging online. So we've had a late start, but it's at least a start. I learned a long time ago that anything worth doing is worth doing poorly in the beginning. Otherwise, I'd never tie my shoes. All that is to say that my finely tuned scope and sequence is going to be interrupted the next 2 weeks. My plan was to talk about the introductory rites this week and next, but in talking with some of you, I realized that because of the pandemic, we should cover a bit more preparation before we begin Mass. Beyond that, February 17th, now that's next Wednesday, is Ash Wednesday, the beginning of the season of Lent. So next week, we'll talk about Lent so you can understand it as you go through it. Why do I feel like I'm giving you the history of the clock now? So last week, we talked about where we gather, what you can expect to see in the church. But with it being challenged to even come to Mass through all this, I realize that not everyone is in a position to know who you can expect to see. Now, everything is based on relationship. So the who and the why is probably more important than the what. So I'm going to try to use the Mass as a scaffolding. The first who is also the best why. At every Mass, we get to see God, hear God, speak to God, touch God. Now think about that. I'm going to repeat that. At every Mass, you get to see God, hear God, speak to God, touch God. Now, I want to be absolutely clear about this. I'm not waxing poetic. I'm not being philosophic. I'm talking about being able to see, hear, touch, and speak to God in a literal sense. I'm not even talking about a spiritual presence. Yes, wherever two or more are gathered in his name, he is in our midst, from Matthew 18:20. And yes, God is always present to us, but sometimes we're not present to God. How can we be if we don't know where to look? So I'm talking about the teachings of the church from the Constitution of the Sacred Liturgy, promulgated in 1963 from the Second Vatican Council. Paragraph 8 tells us that Christ is truly present in the priest when he's celebrating a sacrament, the scriptures when it's being proclaimed, the bread and the wine after it's been consecrated, and in the people when we stand together, pray together, work together. Now you notice that these people and items are not in and of themselves the real presence. Something happens to happen at Mass for the symbols to become what they signify. For example, the priest is not always the real presence of Christ. But when he's presiding at a sacrament, he becomes autere Christi. When he's presiding at baptisms, confirmations, when he's presiding at weddings, when he's presiding at the Mass consecration, he becomes the Christ at the altar. Now, the scriptures are always the word of God, but when it's proclaimed at Mass, it becomes the voice of God. It's the proclaimed word that has the power within the Mass. It's the proclaimed word that's always had the power back 4,000 years ago from Abraham, the proclaimed word, not just the written word. The bread and wine are just bread and wine until they're consecrated through the Eucharistic prayer and I'm going to use the word transubstantiation that makes them truly the body and blood of Christ. Now, obviously, we're going to be talking a lot deeper into that when we get to that point of the Mass. And we are not the real presence of God as individuals. But when we stand together, pray together, work together, we become the real presence. As a matter of fact, the liturgy translates to work of the people. Now, on that last point, whenever I speak about this to young people, I stress this point. When you see a horrible tragedy in the news, whether it's a man-made or an earthquake or something along those lines, you might wonder, where is God in that? Now, as Catholics, we know where to find God in that. Look for the people who are standing together. Look for the people who are praying together. And look for the people that are working together. So when Catholics say we go to Mass to see God, we're not being abstract, or at least we shouldn't be. Thomas Groome, a professor of theology at Boston College, often tells this story at his workshops. Now remember, he teaches at a Catholic theology to students at a Catholic university. So on the first day of class, to his freshman class at least, he asks, how many of you believe that God is truly present at the Mass? Now, mind you, these freshmen didn't just happen to walk into a Catholic theology class at a Catholic university. They pretty much know what the correct answer is to this question. So everyone raises their hand, and probably with lots of confidence. I know the answer to this one. This is going to be easy. But then he'll follow up with this question. How many of you were at Mass this last Sunday? This time only a few hands would come up. At least the students were being honest in their response. But his final question is this. If you really believe that God is truly present at Mass, how could you not be there? How could you, let me put it this way. If we were to put a full-page ad in the Manteca Bulletin or the San Francisco Chronicle, whatever it might be, saying that come to the Hyatt Regency Hotel and with a check for $500 and we'll show you God this Saturday or this Sunday, I'm willing to bet that some people would go ahead and show up with their checks. I don't know how prevalent it was, but I remember in the 80s and 90s, you would actually see full-page ads in the San Francisco Chronicle talking about come to this workshop to see God. But we get a chance to see God, hear God, touch God at every Mass. at every Mass. So my question to you is, what if it's true? How could you not be there? I have more to say. Yeah, I know. I always have more to say. But I feel like if I say anything more on this video, it would just drown out an important truth in a flood of words. So I'm going to take advantage of the fact that it is a video and say those extra shallow words for a separate session. In the meantime, once again, thanks for watching. My name is Dave, and I am not in charge.